Namaste. Well, we're gathering around the Life Divine again. And here it's the 28th of September, 2025. We were discussing in recent weeks much about how it is that the essential divine can retain its essentiality and manifest as a positive existence, throwing into ordered becoming much or some of its potential, that none of it is accidental, that there is a deep and hidden intent within the entire manifestation, that we happen to begin from darkness is a secret that we'll come back to over and over again and address it from a number of perspectives each time we approach. Because the question persists, how and why does a supremely powerful and perfect consciousness create a level of ignorance within itself? We go back to the idea that there is no creation outside of pure and real being. Whatever happens, happens inside the divine being, and cannot, in a way, contradict the profundity of its nature, however bewildering it might be to the measuring mind. So, how does it do this? So, Sri Aurobindo describes, by going back to a verse from the Rig Veda and capturing its essence, what it means for the divine to dip into darkness. There is, on page 602, if you look at the current version of the Life Divine, where he's quoting from the Rig Veda. It's RV 190 in the first verse. In English, as he translated it, from the kindled fire of energy of consciousness. That's tapas. Truth, satyam, was born, and the law of truth. From that, the night, ratri. From the night, the flowing ocean of being, samudra. Simply that verse tells us so much. Something has kindled this energy, this tapas, into being. The Rig Veda doesn't say what it is. Why must it have a name? Why must it have a shape? But this power of concentration, tapas, is great heat, forces, compresses itself, because there is only it, yes? And from that compression, from that concentration, from that heat, from that splendor, from that perfect state comes truth. Satyam, which means that it's based on reality, true being. So this truth orders itself, constructs within its own nature, emerging from tapas, an ordered realm in which it moves. Because ritam is not stagnant, it is not an isolate, it is not immovable, it is in motion, it is dynamic. So there's something behind that energizes, that produces this truth. and this ordered world. So in a way, there's that realm of existence. From this law of truth, ritam, comes night, darkness, ratri. The opposite. How? Why? And from the night comes the flowing ocean of being. So that flowing ocean of being, we'll come back to it, but this is the beginning of the universe that we inhabit. We know nothing about the night. We look below, we dimly perceive that it's there. As dimly as when we look up, we see the supreme light. So, between these two is where we exist. But it is from this ocean of being, this ocean of delight, that everything that tickles our fancy, that opposes us and obstructs our movement forward, all of it is here. So this is a profound tapas that is necessary to achieve manifestation. In the integrality of Brahman, this thing that grows dynamically, which is inexhaustible, retiring into its own depths, ignorance is a mere feature. It is a subordinate phenomenon, and yet it is. But it is permitted and in a sense licensed or enabled to exist by that undefinable something, whose energy produces the upper worlds and the worlds that we currently inhabit. That is an integral, that is oneness again. It is inseparable in standing back and supporting the process, but also enters into it. It does not itself directly exclude its own being from that, nor in manifesting the many out of the one does it exclude one from the other. The many are always embedded in. They live in the web of oneness, cannot escape it. So, ignorance to Sri Aurobindo, then, is a purposeful oblivion. There's a reason in it, not an accident, not devilry, and not a fall from grace. It is deliberately implanted in there, this essence of all, this dynamic pulsating energy, deliberately placed there. And what this has to do in some outer play of existence is not clear to the human mind, but it is part of the cognizance of the divine and that vision. So what we are required to do as we grow in knowledge and in power is to see how Brahman, the divine, sees itself. We have to see how Brahman sees itself integrating simultaneously with partial and phased perspectives and in the biggest picture possible. And as Brahman is never lost in its own actions and its own stillness, we too must be like that and achieve solidity in our poise and flexibility in our dynamism. We must become consciously divine. We must participate in the fullness of what Brahman is, here and now. So, Brahman, as being, again, is essential and dynamic at once. If it's distributed, if it seems to be dark, if it seems to be light, if it seems to be joyous, if it seems to be suffering, it is never truly divided. It is never alienated from its own existence, and it is involved partially in a play to suit its own purposes. Nothing can be thrust upon Brahman. There is no external agency. There is no internal agency either that can, in a sense, wrestle Brahman to the ground and make it do what it wants. The divine is always the master of its own existence. So, an integral knowledge towards which we aspire admits the valid truths of all views of existence, because there is something that's true in every perspective. It may not be contextual. It may be divorced from the current flow of things, and in that way be unreal, but nothing exists that doesn't have some fragment of truth, certainly an essence behind it, supporting it. How can we bring all together in a composed order? That is what we have to do in our external being, in our internal being, in our conversations with, in our family existence with all of humanity, with nature beyond humanity. All of us fulfilling the role that Brahman, that the divine, whatever you want to call that, has invested in us. An investment has been made, and we must redeem it. It's part of the bargain that we made when we came here. So each is valid in its own field, but we must seek to get rid of limitations and negations and to harmonize, and to use Sri Aurobindo's sentence, to harmonize and reconcile these partial truths in a larger truth which fulfills all the many sides of our being in the one omnipresent existence. You'll find that on page 693. So, what we perceive in the universe is an actual effort. The becoming has an energy implanted behind it that drives it forward. And that effort, that tapas, enforces a kind of forgetfulness of its larger being, and so becomes a process of ignorance and delivers ignorance also as a product. So if you look at this gigantic power that's focusing itself, it excludes and extrudes everything from its field of vision. It's focused only on that, so it forgets the much else that it might be, this particular power of focusing. That ignores the rest of being, hence ignorance. And then we have delivered into the manifestation the power or the state of ignorance. Because whatever is there is in a state of ignorance. It is not aware of where it came from. It's not aware of what its lofty origin is. It's not aware of its direction forward. It simply dwells in darkness. So later, we'll look at the method and the mechanism by which ignorance is wrought, but that's not our goal tonight. We're sort of staying in the misty heights, if you will, of metaphysics right now. But these different states, inclusion, seclusion, exclusion, all describe truths that somehow inhere. It's all part of one. So don't worry. Our deepest knowledge our worldview should determine for us how we conceive our existence, how we approach our material, our vital, our intellectual existence. If we can perceive what our mighty origin is, what our waiting goal might be, then we ought to be able to fashion our lives in a way that accords with that. We would call that yoga. We would say, let's be effortful, let's practice tapasya, let's aim towards living in unity with that, but also with all else that comes from that. It would be the practice of yoga at every stage of our being. We would want to unify, to make one, to bring into yoga all the parts of our nature, whether it's our suffering body, our delimited desire capacities, our vital energies, or what conceptions we're able to possess now and might outgrow and gain access to greater light. All of it ought to be able to work together. We must attain to the core principles of being, which we've just, in a sense, spoken about, and accord our active nature with them. It's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to hug ourselves and say, oh, it's wonderful, this deep fraternity that we have, if we don't live in it. It's one thing to recognize it as a spiritual power and another to dynamize it in matter. We haven't fully succeeded with that. We've attempted. We've got aspirational plans. But again, let's really see where we are so that we can move forward step by step, and each step forward will be a real advance and not a false step that we then have to revert course to correct before we move forward. Let's make as few mistakes as possible. As when the Upanishad said, most approach and choose between the pleasant and the good. And most will go straight for the pleasant. But the person who desires the good will walk all around and look at it from every angle to see, is this merely pleasant or is it really good? And while we're on it, I think let's remember what the great virtues were in Greek philosophy. Simple, the simple. Truth, the good, the true, the beautiful. If we can align ourselves with those simple approaches to life, our lives will be harmonious. Well, so attain to the core principles. Make our active nature commingle with all these virtues. Sri Aurobindo has a great sentence. Truth of being must govern truth of life. Life must manifest being and not become detached from it. Not fracture being. Live in the authentic self. And then things go well. The truth of life will emerge. That also is on page 693. So we saw that Sri Aurobindo went back to the Rig Veda when he was opening this chapter. It was the 13th chapter in Book 2, Exclusive Concentration of Consciousness Force and the Ignorance. So he often goes back to mythopoeic, myth-making imagery and language to describe things that the mind really can't capture. We have to turn to myth, as Joseph Campbell ably noted in his Power of Myth series on television, to speak to the big picture. He noted, Joseph Campbell did, that even physicists, etc., when they have to describe the beginnings of the universe or something like that, they revert back to this ancient language, which is almost at the very beginning of our DNA code. That's the language that speaks to us best, that moves us most. So here, he described in that passage we looked at from the Veda, using Indo-European mythology to achieve that. But his choice of language comes again and again to capture the play, and indeed sometimes the war between various forces, especially light and dark. That echoes through all our mythological traditions, whether they're Greek or Indian. So again, we're dealing with night, we're dealing with ignorance, we're dealing with the darkness with which we began our evolutionary journey. Are we keeping a journal? So night is not an accident. Night was intended. It came from Ritam. Ritam, ordered, conscious, illuminated being, projected night as its opposite into what seems, I guess we could call, to use the Greek term, chaos. But there are treasures hidden in the darkness, in the recesses of the world. And it's a sacred gestation that delivers the ocean, samudra, as a first manifestation from the darkness. And there are two oceans. We've noted the one above, the one of Ritam and Satya. But there's also one below. The one above, that would be like Satchit Ananda to us, the supernal realms. And the one below is connected to the one above in later mythology by the sleeping Vishnu, lying upon the infinite Ananta, the coiled serpent, both at rest upon the sweet, milky ocean from which all existence manifests so far as we know it. So, first, emerging from this ocean is desire. So, a power of life, searching for the hidden delight it needs to sustain itself. And then comes the intercession of light and consciousness, stimulating the appearance of mind. So, on that oceanic, milky basis, we get land, we get living creatures, both in liquid and material forms and worlds. We climb through the ordering of the gods upwards. So there's that dark material basis at the commencement of things, then an emerging life power seeking satisfaction, and a questing mind that wants to know, that wishes to know, that builds knowledge, that constructs, then finds its constructions falling apart, has to reconstruct. So, as Sri Aurobindo calls it, the black dragon of the inconscience sustains with its vast wings. And of course, this summons to us a similar image in Savitri later. And its back of darkness, the whole structure of the material universe. It's all there, based in this darkness. And yet, cosmos, moves forward with divine impulsion, and the Vedic sacrifice, for instance, brings human aspiration and godly empowerment together to effect harmony and luminosity, to bring gladness and uplift to light. So, Sri Aurobindo notes that it is the spirit of Brahman, the divine, ever expanding, that emerges in the evolution. It's not just darkness, it comes out dynamically. It's not simply an essence and not simply an abstract existence or something behind existence, a non-being perhaps. It is not simply that. It is definitely moving forward through these things. Obstacles are overcome. Circles of restriction, he writes, are slowly broken. The python coils of its obscurity shot through by the arrows of the sun god. Page 692, should you want to look it up. Yes, I'm lingering around those pages, aren't I? But a note about those python coils. We remember Vishnu reclining upon the endless serpent Ananta, representing the infinity of existence, but coiled up in energy that can move if it wishes. So the python in Greek mythology is also central in motif. Gaia, the Earth Mother, at her very navel in Delphi, has a son named Python. But Python is protecting her, thinks she doesn't want to move. I've got to defend her against all comers. But Apollo comes and sees that, no, this is a darkness. This darkness has to get out of the way. We'll skip some of the imagery of the myth and just stick with the main symbolism here. And because Python refuses to collaborate and to cooperate with divine aims, Apollo, representing the solar force, the light from above, fights and defeats the python with arrows of light. This is the big image. The reign of darkness ends, and things move forward. And we too shall now move forward, remembering how Indra came with his mace and struck Vritra and released the creative waters that had been pent up so that the worlds could manifest. How he went to the cave of existence and summoned forth the hidden powers of light that dwelt within. And so we are doing this within ourselves. We must continue to do it consciously and with energy and courage. And we must be examples of what that is in our own integrity. Not us. We're not giving up. We're moving forward. Well, I think we'll turn to Savitri now. Lucky you, I'm early tonight. We're on page 53 in Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 4, The Secret Knowledge. Not quite halfway down the page. The outward and the immediate are our field. The dead past is our background and support. Mind keeps the soul prisoner. We are slaves to our acts. We cannot free our gaze to reach wisdom's sun. Inheritor of the brief animal mind, man, still a child in nature's mighty hands, in the succession of the moments lives. To a changing present is his narrow right. His memory stares back at a phantom past. The future flees before him as he moves. He sees imagined garments, not a face. Armed with a limited, precarious strength, he saves his fruits of work from adverse chance. A struggling ignorance is his wisdom's mate. He waits to see the consequence of his acts. He waits to weigh the certitude of his thoughts. He knows not what he shall achieve or when. He knows not whether at last he shall arrive. He knows not whether at last he shall survive, or end like the mastodon and the sloth, and perish from the earth where he was king. He is ignorant of the meaning of his life. He is ignorant of his high and splendid fate. Only the immortals on their deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought, who are overseers of fate and chance and will, and experts of the theorem of world need, can see the idea, the might that changed time's course, come maned with light from undiscovered worlds, here, while the world toils on with its deep, blind heart, the galloping hooves of the unforeseen event, bearing the superhuman rider near, and, impassive to earth's din and startled cry, return to the silence of the hills of God. As lightning leaps, as thunder sweeps, they pass, and leave their mark on the trampled breast of life. We'll pause there, since the season for allergies insists that I must. So, namaste, Jai Ma. Much love to you all. Good to be with you again. Stay well. You know, be bright, be good, be true, be beautiful.